She slapped me on my face in front of 200 guests. The sound was sharp enough to stop the music, sharp enough to make the chandeliers tremble. Phones came up like a forest of black mirrors, capturing the moment in frozen frames. Somewhere someone gasped. Someone else whispered my name. I don't remember letting go of the champagne flute. I only remember it falling, hitting the marble floor, and shattering like a pistol crack. It was supposed to be a celebration. White lilies, gold table runners, a string quartet in the corner. My son's wedding banquet. I had paid for everything, the ballroom, the music, the cake. I wore my favorite emerald dress, the one my late husband had bought me years ago. I thought that counted for something. She stood on the stage, my new daughter-in-law, veil gone, makeup perfect, a smile sharp enough to cut glass. In one hand a microphone, in the other a velvet clutch. Her voice came through the PA system, soft but carrying. "Give me your house keys. Now." First I thought it was a joke. Laughter flickered around the room. But she wasn't smiling. "You're unfit to live alone," she said. "It's time you handed them over." I froze. I could feel 200 eyes swinging toward me like searchlights. "Give me the keys," she said again. I heard my own voice, thin and shaking but clear. "No, this isn't the place." The daughter-in-law stepped down from the stage, heels clicking like gunshots across the marble. "It's exactly the place," she said, "and exactly the time." The room went quiet. Only the string quartet kept playing, soft and eerie. I remember her hand flashing up, the sound of skin on skin, my head whipping sideways. My cheek burned. Gasps rippled through the guests. Someone's champagne glass hit the floor. The quartet stopped mid-note. "Give me the keys." Her eyes glinted under the chandelier light. I straightened slowly, aware of every phone aimed at me, every whisper.
My son's face across the room was pale, conflicted, eyes darting between us. He didn't move. I reached into my clutch and felt the smooth weight of the keys. For a heartbeat I considered giving them to her just to stop the humiliation. But then I saw her smile, wide, victorious, like she had already won, and my spine stiffened. "No," I said louder this time. A tremor of shock went through the crowd. She raised her hand again, but I stepped back. "Not here. Not now." Someone shouted, "Call security." But no one moved. 200 guests frozen, recording, sipping champagne as though watching a play. I turned away. My cheek throbbed, but my hands didn't shake. I walked past the round tables, past the floral arches, through the double doors of the ballroom. My heels echoed on the marble like a metronome counting down. Outside in the hotel corridor, the music and murmurs dulled to a hum. The air smelled of bleach and roses. My phone vibrated in my hand, still recording from some instinct I didn't understand. I pressed a number without even looking. It rang once, then twice. Someone answered on the second ring. "It's time," I whispered. The voice on the other end said nothing at first. Then, "Understood." I ended the call and stood there, one hand on the cool brass railing, trying to slow my breathing. Through the double doors I could still hear her voice, my new daughter-in-law, laughing into the microphone, telling guests it was just a misunderstanding. But I knew exactly what it was. I wiped the corner of my mouth where a trace of lipstick had smeared from the slap. My reflection in the hallway mirror stared back at me, cheek red, eyes steady. This wasn't over. I turned my phone around and looked at the screen. The camera had caught everything: the demand, the slap, the crowd. Evidence. I slid the phone into my clutch, squared my shoulders, and started walking toward the elevators. Inside the ballroom, the string quartet started playing again. But the melody was shaky, discordant, like everyone had forgotten the notes. As the elevator doors closed, my phone buzzed once more. A text from an unknown number. "Everything in place?" I typed back one word. "Yes." Then the elevator descended, carrying me away from the glitter and the whispers, into the quiet where the real story would begin.
The night before the wedding banquet, I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my bedroom, smoothing the emerald dress over my hips. It was my late husband's favorite on me. Understated but elegant, the kind of fabric that drapes instead of clings. Outside, the city hummed with weekend noise, but my room was silent except for the low murmur of the news channel and the faint whir of the ceiling fan. On the dresser, 3 velvet boxes sat open. A pearl necklace, a pair of gold bangles, a sapphire brooch. I chose only the necklace. I didn't need to look rich, I already was. It was a quiet wealth, old apartments tucked under shell companies, rental properties my husband and I had bought decades ago, and a trust fund Lily, my granddaughter, wouldn't know about for years. I liked it that way. I slipped the necklace on and caught my reflection again, dignified, polished, and yet under the polish there was tension. The ache of a mother who sensed something off with her only son but couldn't quite admit it aloud. On the bed my phone buzzed with a message from him. "Big day tomorrow, Mom. Be nice to Rachel. She's nervous." Rachel, my future daughter-in-law. I typed back, of course, but didn't hit send right away. The words felt like a script I'd been forced to read too many times. For months she'd been trying to insert herself into my affairs, accidentally opening my mail, probing questions about my investments, suggesting I downsize for my health. My son, blinded by infatuation or guilt, never saw it. I set the phone down and walked to the safe hidden behind the painting. A habit. 3 quick turns, then the click. Inside were the deeds, the power of attorney papers, the original will. On top sat a thin black phone separate from my normal one. Its screen was blank now, but the number in it was burned into my memory. I didn't take anything out. I only needed to see it to remind myself. I wasn't powerless. In the kitchen below, Rosa, my housekeeper of 20 years, was arranging the silver trays for the caterer. She'd been with me since my husband was alive, practically a member of the family. She'd whispered once, "That girl's after more than your son's heart," but I'd brushed it off. I wanted my son's wedding day to be clean, unburdened by suspicion. That morning at the banquet hall I arrived early. The ballroom smelled of lilies and polished wood. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, bouncing off the crystal chandeliers. Staff bustled between tables with linen napkins and champagne flutes. I moved through them like a conductor, polite nods, a small smile here, a correction there. This was my gift to my son after all. One perfect day. Maya, my oldest friend, touched my arm as I checked the seating chart. "You look radiant," she said, eyes scanning my face. "But tired." "I'm fine," I murmured. "Just details." She lowered her voice. "I still don't like how Rachel talks about you. I heard her on the phone last week, something about getting the house sorted." I smiled with that warmth. "Let's not ruin today." Maya frowned but said nothing more. She had been my sounding board through my husband's illness, through raising my son alone. She also knew about the safe. She was one of 3 people in the world who did. By noon, guests began arriving. A cascade of perfume, laughter, cameras flashing. I moved among them, greeting old friends, shaking hands with distant cousins. I caught glimpses of Rachel across the room, her arm threaded through my son's, whispering in his ear. He nodded, eyes darting toward me. It wasn't just Rachel. Over the past year, my son had begun echoing her phrases, her worries. "Mom, the house is too big." "Mom, you should consider moving closer to us." "Mom, let me handle your finances." It was a slow encroachment, gentle but relentless. I pushed back softly at first, then firmly. Each time he'd smiled the same thin smile and said, "It's just for your own good." Each time I'd heard Rachel's voice behind his. In the corner of the ballroom stood the quartet tuning their instruments. I watched them and thought of another quartet years ago at my own wedding. Back then, my late husband had been the one orchestrating everything, calm and decisive. When he died, the quiet filled with paperwork, lawyers, and my own decisions. I'd survived that. I could survive this. A server passed with a tray of champagne. I took one and sipped, scanning the room. My phone buzzed. A text from my lawyer. "Documents ready for signature at any time." I typed back, "Hold until after event." Subtle clues everywhere if anyone had looked closely. The envelope sticking out of my clutch, the private glances exchanged with Maya, the black phone in my safe. But no one noticed. To them I was just the mother of the groom, elegant, fading to be managed. Rachel's parents approached, all smiles and praise. "What a lovely venue," they said. "You've done so much." Their eyes lingered on my pearl necklace. "Thank you," I said, smiling, but inside I was measuring distances. How far to the exit, how long until the speeches? At the head table my son leaned toward Rachel, his hand covering hers. They looked like a magazine ad for young love. But when she glanced at me, something sharp flickered behind her smile, like the flash of a blade. I smoothed my dress and checked my phone again. My thumb hovered over the black phone's number, the one no one else knew. Not yet. In my mind, two versions of the day were unfolding. The one everyone saw, champagne, music, vows, and the one I sensed beneath it, quiet maneuvers and whispered demands. And as the guests filled the ballroom, as the chandeliers flickered to life, as the quartet struck its first notes, I felt the smallest shift inside me. Not fear, not even anger. A kind of steadying, as if some hidden part of me had been waiting for this moment all along. The slap still stings on my cheek, but what stings worse is the absurdity of her demand. She already lives in a house I bought outright. 5 bedrooms, marble foyer, a pool in the back. I remember standing there at the open house 2 years ago, signing papers while she gushed about her dream kitchen. I never even put my name on the housewarming plaque. It was my gift to them. And now she's demanding my keys. In the corridor outside the ballroom, I lean against the cold wall, letting the memory spool out. The ink on those deeds hasn't faded. My signature still controls far more than Rachel or my son ever realized. I picture my lawyer's office, the mahogany shelves, the fireproof cabinets, deeds, titles, offshore accounts. Each time my husband and I bought a property, we tucked it under a different LLC. After he died, I kept the pattern, layers on layers like shells around a pearl. The house they live in now is only one slice. My estate spreads across counties, quiet and invisible. Inside the ballroom, the music resonates faintly. Through the crack of the door I see Rachel basking under the chandeliers, laughing with guests, telling them I had a spell and left early. Phones flash. My son sits beside her, face stiff, eyes flicking toward the door as if he wants to follow but doesn't dare. I think back to the first time she hinted about my keys. It was over brunch a month before the wedding. "You shouldn't be rattling around alone in that big old house," she'd said lightly. "Wouldn't it be easier if we took care of it for you?" She'd called it downsizing. I called it retirement. But the word tasted wrong. Then came the probing questions. "Do you have a will? Is your name on the vacation property?" She'd phrase them like concern, but her eyes stayed calculating. My son would squeeze her hand and say, "She's just trying to help, Mom." And the secret meetings. I'd walk into my living room to find them whispering over my mail, snapping my bank statements shut as soon as I entered. Once I caught Rachel slipping an envelope into her purse. She claimed it was a recipe from my kitchen file. Rosa had noticed too. One afternoon she came to me with folded arms, whispering, "They're taking things, Senora. Small now, but later." I'd waved her off, telling myself it was pre-wedding stress. I reach into my clutch and touch the corner of an envelope. Inside are copies of my key documents, the trust agreement, the deeds, the updated power of attorney that quietly revoked my son's access last week. My fingers tighten on the paper. Down the corridor, a door opens and Maya steps out, her face pale under the hotel lighting. She must have slipped away from the banquet to find me. "Are you okay?" she whispers. I manage a smile. "Fine." She glances back toward the ballroom. "Do you know what they're saying in there? That you're unstable. That you're going to sign over the house tonight." I give a small laugh, bitter and low. "The house they're living in? I already gave them that one. They want everything else." Maya steps closer. "I warned you." I nod. "I know." She looks at the envelope in my hand. "Is that what I think it is?" "Copies," I say. "The originals are safe." Maya lowers her voice even more. "They're trying to set you up." Her words land like a cold drop of water down my spine. I think of the forged documents we found in my husband's estate years ago. I think of Rachel's uncanny ease with my son's passwords, the sudden changes in my bank alerts. "They want to prove you're incompetent. Maya says. If they can humiliate you in public, they can argue you're unfit, then get power of attorney. It's classic. I look past her toward the ballroom doors. Through the glass panels, I see Rachel leaning against my son, laughing at something on her phone. Guests clustered around, whispering. Maya touches my arm. We need to move fast. Whatever you've got planned. I already made the call, I murmur. What call? You'll see, I say. My phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Proceed. I glance at Maya and slide the phone back into my clutch without answering. Not yet. We stand there in the quiet corridor, the music from the ballroom a distant echo. I feel the slap on my cheek fading to a dull heat, replaced by a steadier, colder focus. Maya leans close, whispering again. They're trying to set you up. This time I don't wave her off. I just nod slowly. Then let them try. Long before the slap, long before the stage and the microphones and the crowd, there were quiet acts of generosity, small decisions that built the life my son now lives. I remember him at 16, head down over textbooks at our kitchen table, muttering formulas and Latin verbs, his dreams larger than our dining room could hold. I paid for every tutor, every test, every trip. When he wanted to go to flight school, I wrote the check before he even asked, tucking it in a card that read, "For your future." Later, when he graduated, I bought him his first car outright. You don't owe me anything, I said. Just do well. Build a life. And he did, or seemed to. 4 years it was just the two of us, mother and son against the world. Then Rachel appeared. I met her at his birthday dinner, bright smile, impeccable manicure, eyes that never quite blinked long enough. She leaned into me that first evening, calling me Mom, before I'd even finished my soup. You've done so much for him, she said. He's so lucky to have you. First I liked her. She brought him home-cooked meals during his long shifts. She sent me flowers on Mother's Day. When she moved into his apartment, she framed one of my old photographs and hung it in their hallway. Little gestures, little hooks. But slowly, almost invisibly, she began to redraw the borders around him. She started answering his phone when I called. He's busy, I'll tell him you rang. She began scheduling their weekends away during the times we used to have dinner. We're trying to travel more, she'd say brightly. I noticed subtle comments designed to wedge themselves between us. He worries about you in that big house, she'd say. It's too much upkeep. Or, you must be so lonely now. Maybe you'd be happier closer to us. Always said with a smile, always framed as concern. My son began to echo her language. Mom, you should really consider downsizing. Mom, let me help with your bills. Mom, Rachel thinks you'd be safer if we manage things for you. The first time she probed about my will, it was at the kitchen island. She leaned on her elbows, swirling a glass of wine. Do you have it all set up? You know, just in case. She caught herself and smiled. I'm just a planner by nature. I should have heard the warning bells. Rosa did. She came to me one afternoon, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Be careful, she murmured. This girl is planting seeds. But I wanted peace. I wanted a family, not an argument. My son had grown up watching me fight every battle alone after his father died. I wanted his wedding day to be full of joy, not suspicion. So I ignored the small signs. I remember one evening 6 months before the wedding. He called, voice tense. Rachel feels you're not respecting her role. She's just trying to take care of things. I swallowed hard. I've always taken care of things. He sighed. That's the problem, Mom. You never let anyone else. The next week Rachel took over the wedding planning entirely. I still paid the bills, the ballroom, the quartet, the flowers, but she signed the contracts. She asked for my credit card to speed things up. I told myself it was normal. Brides handle details. But then she started intercepting invitations to my friends, changing seating charts, making sure Maya was seated at the far end of the hall. And yet when she smiled at me when my son put his arm around her when he said, "Thank you for everything, Mom," my heart softened. I'd spent decades being both parents. If this was the price of his happiness, a little distance, a little control, maybe it was worth it. I also feared the other thing, losing him. He'd once been my entire world. Now he belonged to someone else. A son can leave quietly if a mother pushes too hard. I didn't want to be that story. So when Rachel asked me to sign documents just for the caterer, I didn't read the fine print. When she offered to update my home insurance, I let her. When she suggested combining my house keys with theirs, I laughed nervously and said maybe later. Maya's warnings grew louder. "This isn't normal," she'd say. "She's isolating you." But each time I'd wave it off. "She's young. She's nervous. She'll come around." Looking back now from the corridor outside the ballroom, it's as if I'd been watching a slow-motion takeover of my life, one charm offensive at a time. I think of the night Rachel convinced my son to cancel our annual holiday trip, claiming she was sick, then posting photos of them at a resort. I think of the password changes on my online accounts that my son said were for my safety. And still I bought their house. I signed the transfer for their car. I paid off his student loans. Because generosity was the language I knew. Because I wanted to believe my son would protect me as fiercely as I protected him. Now my cheek still burns from her slap. In front of 200 guests, she showed me exactly how far that generosity had taken me. The ballroom doors swing open slightly. Maya peers out, her face tight. "They're trying to set you up," she whispers again. I look at her, finally understanding the full weight of what she's been saying all along, and for the first time in years, I feel something colder than fear settle into my bones. Resolve. I walked out of the hotel and into the cool night, the hum of the city rising to meet me. Behind me the ballroom chandeliers flickered like captive stars. Ahead, the taxi lane glowed under sodium lamps. My cheek still burned, but under the heat was a steadiness I hadn't felt in years. I took out the black phone, the one from the safe, and pressed a single button. It rang once. A man's voice answered, low and calm. "Yes. It's time," I said. "Understood." The line went dead. I slipped the phone back into my clutch and raised my hand for a taxi. When it pulled up, I gave the driver an address not listed in my contacts. A small office in the financial district. As we moved through the city, I looked back once at the hotel. Through the tall windows I could still see Rachel on the stage, laughing into the microphone, telling the crowd I'd gone to freshen up. My son sat stiff beside her, eyes glued to his phone. 20 minutes later the taxi dropped me at an office building with no signage. Inside, the lobby smelled of marble and old paper. My lawyer, Evelyn Hart, had rented a suite here for decades. She was more than a lawyer. She'd been my husband's confidant, the keeper of our hidden empire. I took the elevator to the 12th floor. Evelyn was waiting, a tall woman in a charcoal suit, hair cropped short. She looked at me with calm appraisal. "I watched the live stream," she said. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I lied. She gestured toward a glass-walled conference room where a single file box sat on the table. "Everything you asked for." Inside the box were deeds, stock certificates, original titles. I slid my hand over them like a priest over relics. All the properties Rachel thought she'd mapped out were only the visible tip. The rest, the core assets, still sat under my control. Evelyn slid a folder across the table. "I've also gathered the evidence you requested." Inside were screenshots, bank records, notarized affidavits. Each page another small betrayal. Forged signatures, unauthorized account logins, strange transfers. "She's been at this longer than you thought," Evelyn said softly. "And your son has signed some of it." I stared at the papers. My own name bent out of shape, my handwriting clumsily mimicked. Deeds transferred without my knowledge. Account addresses changed. "She's bold," Evelyn said. "Or desperate." I remembered the brunch questions, the intercepted mail, the wedding contracts she'd handled. My generosity had been her mask. "Can we reverse it?" I asked. "Most of it, yes," Evelyn said. "We can freeze accounts, revoke powers of attorney, press charges if necessary, but you need to decide how public you want this to be." I looked up at her. "Public," I said. "If that's what it takes." Evelyn nodded. Then we'll start with this. She handed me a sealed envelope, proof of forgery on the primary deed. It will undo her entire claim. I slipped the envelope into my clutch next to the black phone. There was a knock on the conference room door. Maya stepped in, cheeks flushed from the night air. I figured this is where you'd be, she said. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. She's your confidant? She's the only one I trust, I said. Maya sat across from me. I followed their social feeds. Rachel is telling everyone you're unstable. She's saying you're about to sign over the house because you can't manage it. Let her, I said. Evelyn turned her laptop toward us. On the screen was a digital trail of the daughter-in-law's moves. Requests for duplicate deeds, emails to notaries, a forged driver's license. We've built a full timeline, she said. It's damning. Maya scanned the screen. My God, she whispered. She's not just greedy. She's calculated. I leaned back, feeling the weight of years slide into place. She thinks she's cornered me, I said quietly, but she's already stepped into my trap. Evelyn's voice stayed calm but firm. One thing you need to understand. If she feels the walls closing in, she may do something reckless. She already did, I said, touching my cheek. We sat in silence for a moment. The city lights flickered through the window. Then Evelyn's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, frowned, and turned it so we could see. A new alert from the county clerk's office. Property transfer submitted. Your residence. She clicked. A scan of a deed appeared. My signature at the bottom, dated today. Maya blinked. But you didn't. I didn't sign anything, I said. Evelyn opened another window. It's a forged deed. She's trying to transfer the title tonight. My throat tightened. While I was at the wedding, I whispered. Maya looked at me. This is it. This is the setup. Evelyn started typing furiously. I can flag it before it goes through, but we need a sworn statement. Tonight. I reached for the pen she handed me. My hand shook only once before steadying. Then let's finish this, I said. Maya's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, eyes widening. She just posted a photo of herself holding a set of keys. Your keys. I closed my eyes for a heartbeat. I could still hear the slap, the hush of 200 guests, the chandeliers trembling. Let her think she's won, I said quietly. Tomorrow she'll be holding nothing. But inside a new thought coiled. How far would Rachel go before morning? How far would my son follow her? The forged deed still glowed on Evelyn's laptop screen when she opened another folder. There's more, she said, her voice lower now. You need to see this. Maya leaned closer. More what? Evelyn pulled up a background report compiled by a private investigator she'd kept on retainer for years. The header bore Rachel's full legal name, except it wasn't the name on the wedding license. Her birth certificate says Rachel Claire Mitchell, Evelyn said. But she's also used the names Claire Jordan, R.C. Mason, and one more, all tied to different bank accounts. I stared at the screen. A string of addresses scrolled past. Florida, Arizona, even Canada. Short-term leases, P.O. boxes, forwarding services. She's had multiple identities for at least a decade. Evelyn continued. And we found a sealed juvenile record from Ohio. We're working to unseal it. My mind spun. The woman who called me mom, who sent me flowers on Mother's Day, who framed my photos, she was a stranger. Maya frowned at another tab. Is this her social media? Evelyn nodded. An old profile under a different name. She deleted most of it, but the photos are still cached. She clicked. On the screen appeared a grainy image of Rachel standing in front of a county courthouse with a man I didn't recognize. A wedding photo dated 7 years earlier. She's been married before, Evelyn said. Never disclosed it. Divorce was sealed. The ex-husband filed a restraining order 2 years later. He disappeared shortly afterward. Maya inhaled sharply. Does your son know any of this? I shook my head. He thinks she's 28, never married, clean background. Evelyn closed the tabs and opened a final document. There's also an ongoing investigation. Fraud, identity theft. Elder exploitation. An FBI agent contacted our office last month asking about her. They're building a case. Maya's eyes widened. So if you act now, you can expose her, Evelyn finished. If you don't, she'll take everything. The words hit like a gavel. Expose her or lose everything. I thought back to all the time she'd handled my mail, all the signatures she'd helped me with, the way she'd insisted on consolidating my accounts. I touched my cheek where her slap had landed. How do we move? Evelyn slid a flash drive across the table. This contains everything. Backgrounds, false identities, the marriage certificate, the sealed order. I've also flagged the forged deed. We have 48 hours to file an injunction. Maya picked up the flash drive. We should go to the FBI ourselves. I already have a contact, Evelyn said. But they'll want your statement. And they'll want your son's eventually. My heart sank. He won't believe me. Not yet. Then show him the proof, Evelyn said gently. I closed my eyes. Proof. It had been my shield for years, deeds, contracts, bank statements. Now it was my only weapon. Maya touched my hand. She's dangerous. If she feels you're about to expose her, she might lash out, Evelyn finished. My phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. No message, just a notification. Image received. I opened it. A photo of my front door. My keys hanging from the lock. Maya leaned in. Is that? Yes, I whispered. Another text followed. Hand over the keys or face the consequences. Maya's eyes shot up to mine. She knows you're onto her. Evelyn's face hardened. That's a threat. We document it immediately. She snapped a photo of the screen with her own phone. This will be evidence. I stared at the message, the tiny words glowing like embers. Face the consequences. My pulse thudded in my ears. They're not bluffing, Evelyn said softly. The forged deed, the multiple identities, the sealed marriage. It's all pointing to a pattern. She's done this before. If you confront her without backup. I'm not confronting her, I said. I'm preparing. Maya squeezed my arm. We're with you. I slid the phone back into my clutch. My mind flicked through the next moves. Freezing accounts, contacting the FBI, confronting my son. But the threat message stayed in the center of my vision like a scar. They want the keys because the keys aren't just keys, I murmured. They're symbolic. Proof that I've surrendered. Evelyn leaned forward. Then don't surrender. We'll file tomorrow morning. Tonight you go home, lock everything down, don't answer the door. Another buzz. A third message. Midnight deadline. Maya swore under her breath. They're escalating. I took a slow breath. The fear was still there, but under it something colder. The steadiness that had built an empire. The patience of a woman who'd seen storms before. I'm not giving them a single thing, I said quietly. Not tonight, not tomorrow. We sat in silence as the city lights pulsed through the office windows. Somewhere in the dark, Rachel, or whatever her name really was, believed she was holding all the cards, but she didn't know the game had changed. The word midnight on that threatening text jolted me back to another time. Long before weddings, long before Rachel. Back when I still thought the world rewarded loyalty. I see myself at 26, stepping off a train in the city with 2 suitcases and a business plan. My father had run a small construction company. I took his contacts and turned them into my own real estate firm. In 5 years I went from drafting lease agreements at a kitchen table to owning half a downtown block. The newspapers called me the youngest queen of property, though they never spelled my name right. I remember the first time I lost everything. I trusted a partner. A man with a winning smile and a handshake that felt like promise. We launched a development fund together. He siphoned the money out through shell companies, left me with debts and lawsuits. It took 2 years to crawl back, another 5 to rebuild. I learned the hard way to scatter my assets, to bury ownership behind LLCs and numbered accounts. When my husband died unexpectedly, everyone assumed he'd been the architect of our fortune. In truth, most of it had been mine, but I let them think otherwise. I folded my name off the letterhead, shifted the properties into neutral names. The public story became widow with a big house, not woman with an empire. That invisibility had saved me before. I hoped it would save me again. I think of the trauma after that betrayal, the headlines, the bankruptcy court, the whispers at my own wedding reception years later. I told myself then, never again, never give anyone full control, not even family, not even the people you love. And yet here I am, decades later, watching my only son drift into another person's orbit. The irony isn't lost on me. In the conference room, Evelyn slides a thick folder across the table. I updated the trust languages you instructed. She says softly, if you sign here, power of attorney transfers immediately. They'll have no legal standing. Maya watches me carefully. Are you sure? This is the line you can't uncross. I open the folder. Inside are crisp new documents. Property schedules, banking authorizations, the trust agreement naming my granddaughter as eventual beneficiary. With one signature I cut my son out, not permanently, but until he comes back to me as himself, not as Rachel's echo. Pick up the pen. My hands remember signing deeds in empty lots at dawn, signing loan agreements under flickering fluorescent lights. Each signature had been a brick in the wall that protected us. This one will be another. Before I sign, my mind flickers to my son as a boy, riding his bike down our street, face flushed with excitement, calling Mom, watch me. I still love him. That will never change. But love can't protect either of us from what Rachel is doing. Evelyn says quietly, once we file this, every account and deed will be out of their reach. If they try to move money or property, it will trigger alerts. Maya leans in. She's counting on you being passive. This ends that tonight. I lower the pen, hesitate. Do you think he'll hate me? I whisper. Maya's voice softens. He'll be alive. He'll be free of her. That's what matters. I nod slowly. Flashbacks ripple behind my eyes. The first apartment I flipped, the contractor I hired who became a lifelong ally. The moment I signed my first $1 million deal. I didn't claw my way up just to hand it all over now. I sign once, twice, 3 times. My name flows across the page like a river finding its course. Evelyn stamps each page with a heavy notary seal, the sound like a judge's gavel. That's it, she says. Power of attorney is now with me as trustee. They have no access. The air in the room shifts. For the first time since the slap, I feel taller, steadier. Evelyn tucks the documents into a secure pouch. I'll file these before dawn. No one will even know until it's too late. Maya exhales. Now you're not just reacting. You're ahead. I set the pen down. I always was, I say quietly. But my chest aches with conflicting currents. Relief, sorrow, anger, and a mother's grief at signing her son out of her financial life. I remind myself it's temporary, a shield, not a wall. My phone buzzes once more on the table. A new message from the unknown number. You can't hide from us. Evelyn looks at me. Don't answer. I don't. I slide the phone into my clutch, close the clasp and straighten my shoulders. This is what my entire life has been training me for. Not real estate, not deals, but the discipline to act when everyone else is blinking. I look at Maya and Evelyn. Now we wait, I say. Outside the office window, the city glows in a grid of gold and black. Somewhere in that grid, Rachel is already plotting her next move, believing I'm still the woman she slapped in front of 200 guests. She doesn't know yet that I'm someone else entirely. By dawn, the ink was dry, the notary seal pressed into every page. Evelyn filed the documents electronically while I sat in her office drinking coffee gone cold. My estate was now locked down. Every account had alerts set. Every deed was legally sealed. But Rachel moved faster than even I expected. At 8:07 a.m., Maya's phone buzzed. She held it up, eyes wide. You need to see this. On the screen was a video uploaded overnight. Grainy footage from the banquet hall showing me leaving the ballroom, clutching my cheek. The caption read, Mother of groom melts down, storms out after slapping bride. The hashtags were worse. She's flipped the narrative, Maya whispered. She's saying you attacked her. Another post followed, this time from a wedding guest. Account clearly controlled by Rachel. She's unstable. We're worried about her mental health. We've been trying to help her. Comments poured in, some sympathetic, most cruel. I scrolled through in silence. The footage had already racked up 50,000 views and climbing. Someone had stitched it with clips of me at past family events. Cropped, slowed, given ominous music. They're building a case in public, Evelyn said. Trying to frame you as incompetent before you can act. They don't know I've already acted, I murmured. Maya bit her lip. Still, people believe what they see first. I thought of the guests filming, the phones raised like a forest. Rachel had been counting on that moment, orchestrating it. The slap had been bait, my walkout the proof she needed. But while she went public, I went quiet. Evelyn sent encrypted files to a trusted journalist, someone she'd worked with on elder exploitation cases. By mid-morning, an investigative thread began to circulate online. Who is Rachel Mitchell really? Screenshots of her multiple identities, a redacted version of the sealed marriage certificate, records of her LLCs. At first the story was small, a few retweets, some gossip blogs, but then a blue-check journalist picked it up. Sources confirm bride at viral wedding video has multiple past names, questionable financial dealings. By noon both narratives were colliding on the same feeds. Rachel's claims of my instability versus receipts showing her hidden life. Commenters started asking why she demanded my house keys in public, why she handled my mail, why she had a forged driver's license. Maya's phone pinged again. Look, she said. Her accounts are going private. She's deleting posts. She underestimated the internet, Evelyn murmured. I sat back watching it unfold. Years of caution, of hiding my assets, of documenting everything, now it was paying off. But Rachel wasn't done. Around 2 p.m. a new account sprang up with screenshots of my medical records, therapy visits after my husband's death, a prescription for anxiety medication, snippets of emails taken out of context. She's unstable, the captions read. She needs guardianship. Maya slammed her phone down. She's doxing you. She's desperate, Evelyn said. We countered again. Evelyn leaked a copy of the forged deed, stamped and time-dated, to the same journalist. Bride tried to transfer groom's mother's property hours after wedding. The headline read. By evening the tide had shifted. The hashtag started trending. Commenters dug up Rachel's old photos, her sealed divorce, her court appearances. Someone found a mugshot from a minor charge in Arizona. The same faces who'd mocked me at breakfast were now posting fire emojis under the exposés. But it wasn't enough. Rachel still had my son. He hadn't called once. At 7 p.m., as the sun went down behind the city towers, Evelyn's office line rang. She answered, frowned, then handed me the receiver. It's not for me, she said. A man's voice came on, clipped and official. This is Special Agent Langley, Federal Bureau of Investigation. We're aware of your situation. We need to speak with you immediately. My heart said it. Why now? We've been tracking your daughter-in-law for months, he said. Your evidence confirms our case. We're moving tonight. But we need you to stay put. Moving. You'll see, he said. Don't leave your residence. We're freezing the accounts linked to her shell companies. A warrant's been issued. The line clicked off. Maya stared at me. FBI. Evelyn exhaled. I knew they were circling, but not that close. Outside the office window, blue lights flickered in the distance. Helicopters thumped faintly overhead. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't the unknown number. It was my son. Just one message. Mom, what did you do? I typed back but didn't send. Saved us both. Another buzz, the unknown number now. Last chance. Hand over the keys or face the consequences tonight. Maya's face drained of color. They know the feds are coming. Evelyn moved to the window. This is the breaking point. They're cornered. I looked at both women, then at the dark city outside. My heart was pounding but my hands were steady. For years Rachel had been setting the board. Now the board was mine. Somewhere out there, A woman who slapped me in front of 200 guests was realizing that every move she'd made had been documented, mirrored, prepared for. And yet the text burned on my phone like a live fuse. Face the consequences tonight. I glanced at Maya. Tonight isn't over. She nodded slowly. Then we'd better be ready. The courthouse steps were slick from an overnight rain, their stone edges glinting under camera lights. Reporters lined the sidewalk like gulls waiting for scraps, their microphones tipped forward. Flashbulbs popped. This wasn't the quiet, hidden world I'd built for years. This was a stage, and Rachel had dragged me onto it. But today the script was mine. I stepped out of the black town car flanked by Evelyn and Maya. My emerald dress had been replaced by a dark tailored coat and a strand of white pearls. The deed folder tucked under my arm felt like a weapon. Across the plaza, Rachel stood beside my son, sunglasses masking her eyes. Her mouth curled faintly, a smile pitched to the cameras. She wore a pale trench coat and held a manila envelope, her countermove. A bailiff opened the courthouse doors. We filed into the main chamber, marble echoing under our heels. Inside, more press, more murmurs. This was officially a preliminary hearing on the forged deed. But the energy felt like a trial. When the clerk called our names, I rose. Evelyn moved with me, placing exhibits on the desk. Property records, bank transfers, screenshots of Rachel's multiple identities. Maya sat behind us, phone raised to record. The judge, a wiry man with a clipped tone, peered over his glasses. "Mrs., you're alleging fraud and undue influence?" "Yes, Your Honor," Evelyn said. "We have evidence the respondent attempted to transfer her mother-in-law's property using forged signatures and false identification." Rachel laughed softly. "She's delusional," she said to the judge, but loud enough for the cameras. "She's been unstable for years." I stood. "May I?" The judge nodded. I turned to face the room, the press, the rows of strangers, and most of all my son. For months I've been called paranoid, unstable, controlling. I paid for their home, their wedding, their education. In return I was deceived. I opened the folder and held up a deed. "This is the original title to my home. This," I said, holding up another, "is the forged version filed during my son's wedding." A murmur rolled through the room. Cameras clicked. My son shifted in his seat. "Mom," he started. I met his eyes. "You signed papers you didn't read. She coached you to isolate me. She told you I was weak." He shook his head slowly, looking at Rachel, then back at me. "She said you needed help. She said you were slipping." Evelyn placed a photo on the table. Rachel's old mugshot, the sealed marriage certificate, the aliases. Gasps rose from the gallery. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Mitchell, do you dispute these exhibits?" Rachel's smile flickered. "Those are misunderstandings," she said quickly. "Old mistakes." I took a step closer to my son. "Look at me," I said softly. "Have I ever been the woman she described?" He stared at the evidence, at the stamped seals, at the photo of his wife with another man. Slowly, something in his expression cracked. "No," he whispered. Rachel's hand tightened on his arm. "Don't listen." He pulled away. "You lied to me," he said, voice rising. "You lied about everything." Reporters leaned forward. The judge tapped his gavel. In that moment, my son's face was a map of all our years. The child I'd raised, the man I'd lost, the stranger who'd returned. I felt sorrow slice through me even as relief rose. I turned back to the judge. "Your Honor, I request an immediate injunction freezing any transfers and revoking their access to my accounts." The judge nodded sharply. "Granted. The sheriff will execute the order today." Rachel's mask slipped entirely. She lunged toward the microphone. "She's hiding something too," she shouted. "She's not who you think she is either." Maya muttered under her breath. "Here it comes." Rachel pulled a small USB drive from her envelope and held it aloft. "You want secrets? She's been lying for decades." Security stepped forward, but she jerked back, eyes wild. "She hid assets offshore. She cheated taxes. Enough," the judge barked. but the USB drive was already in her hand, glittering like a detonator. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. My son looked from me to Rachel, torn between disbelief and rage. I raised my chin. Yes, I hid my assets, I said calmly. After a man stole everything from me, I built a shield. Every penny was legal, every tax paid. And unlike you, I never forged a signature. The room erupted. Rachel's face twisted. You'll regret this, she hissed, and in one swift motion she bolted for the side door, USB still in her hand. Security lunged, but she slipped through, heels clattering against marble. Reporters surged after her, shouting. The judge slammed his gavel again. Order. Maya grabbed my arm. She's running, Evelyn whispered. Let her. The warrant is live. They'll pick her up before nightfall. But my heart pounded. Rachel had just tried to blow open my past in front of my son, and she still had cards left to play. My son's eyes filled with tears. Mom, he said hoarsely, I'm so sorry. I placed a hand on his shoulder. We'll talk later. Across the chamber, a marshal was already speaking into his radio, calling units to intercept. Outside, sirens wailed faintly, growing closer. I looked at the empty doorway where Rachel had disappeared and felt a strange calm settle over me. This was not over. The cameras caught me turning toward them, face composed, pearls gleaming under the fluorescent lights. This would be the image on every newsfeed by evening. The mother they tried to ruin, standing in the courthouse with evidence in hand, the runaway bride fleeing behind her. Maya leaned in and whispered, This is your moment. Don't flinch. I didn't. But in my gut I knew Rachel's last desperate act was already in motion. By the time we left the courthouse, twilight had settled over the city like blue smoke. Sirens flashed at the edges of the plaza. Unmarked SUVs idled at the curb, doors ajar, men and women in tactical vests moving with quiet purpose. They weren't here for me. They were here for her. Across the street, Rachel stumbled out of an alley flanked by two marshals. The USB she'd tried to wave in the courtroom was now in an evidence bag. She still wore her pale trench coat, but it was streaked with rain, makeup running down her cheeks. Her sunglasses were gone. Without them, her eyes looked younger, almost frightened. A woman in a dark suit stepped forward. Not a marshal, but a federal agent. She spoke quietly, cuffed Rachel, and guided her toward the waiting van. Reporters clustered, shouting questions. Rachel turned once, meeting my gaze. For a heartbeat the fury dropped from her face, and all that was left was something like shame. Then the van door slammed. Maya whispered, It's over. But I knew it wasn't that simple. The van would take Rachel to a holding facility. There would be hearings, trials, lawyers. My son's marriage would detonate in public. Our family would be a headline for weeks. Inside me, two feelings wrestled, relief and grief. Relief that my assets, my home, my future were safe. Grief for the son who'd been led so far from me, for the family I'd tried to build. Evelyn handed me a single folded document. I filed this the night before the wedding, she murmured. You asked me to keep it quiet until everything was secure. I opened it. The trust agreement transferring all my primary assets to Lily, my granddaughter. It was official, irrevocable, already logged with the court. Rachel had never stood a chance of touching it. She'll never be able to touch it, Evelyn said. Even if your son tried, it's protected. I traced Lily's name with my thumb. The ink was fresh, but the decision was years old. Made late at night after reading yet another news story about an heir losing everything to a spouse. I wanted to give him a chance, I whispered. But I couldn't risk hers. Maya squeezed my arm. You did the right thing. My son approached slowly across the plaza, looking 10 years older than he had that morning. Reporters swarmed, but he pushed through. When he stopped in front of me, he didn't speak right away. Finally he said, You were right. I shook my head. I didn't want to be right. He rubbed his eyes. I believed everything she said. I let her isolate you. I signed papers without looking. I don't know how to fix that. There's no easy fix, I said softly. But you're still my son. He exhaled, a shudder more than a breath. Will you ever forgive me? I already did, I said. But forgiveness isn't the same as trust. He nodded, eyes wet. I'll earn it back. Behind him, cameras flashed. A reporter shouted my name. Another shouted Rachel's. The courthouse doors closed with a boom. Evelyn touched my elbow. We can leave now. They've frozen her accounts. The rest will play out in court. I looked back at my son. Go home. Rest. Call me tomorrow. He hesitated. Can I come with you now? Not tonight, I said gently. Tonight I need to be alone. He nodded, understanding more than he said, and stepped back. We drove away in silence. Maya sat beside me, scrolling through the feeds on her phone. The headline had already flipped. Bride arrested in fraud scheme at her own wedding. Underneath, my courthouse speech had been clipped and subtitled. Trending under by the time we reached my house. The street was quiet. The porch light glowed like it always did. Rosa had left the windows open for fresh air. For a moment it looked like nothing had happened. I walked through the front door and into the living room. The keys still hung from the hook where I'd left them. I dropped my clutch on the console, removed my coat, and crossed to the sofa. My cheek had faded from red to pale but still carried a faint outline of the slap. Maya set her phone down. You're free, she said. It's over. I shook my head slowly. It's not about freedom. It's about seeing clearly. I reached for the remote and opened the doorbell camera app. The screen lit up with saved footage. Me at the wedding banquet, clutching my cheek. Me walking out. The phone call to Evelyn. The black SUVs outside the courthouse. I pressed play. The video ran like a short film. Each chapter a pivot. Victim, investigator, strategist. I watched myself on screen, walking taller, speaking steadier, signing papers, handing evidence to the judge. The transformation was visible frame by frame. Maya leaned over. That's who you've always been, she murmured. I shook my head. That's who I had to remember I was. On the screen, the final clip played. Me on the courthouse steps. Rachel being led away in cuffs. Lily's name sealed in the trust folder. I paused the frame and stared at my own face. Not shocked anymore, not hesitant, but clear-eyed. Outside the window, the streetlights flickered. Somewhere far away, Rachel sat in a holding cell plotting her next move. My son sat alone in his apartment, sifting through memories. And Lily slept in her room, oblivious to the storm that had just passed over her life. I powered off the screen. The living room went dark except for the soft glow from the hallway. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like a threat. Felt like space. I stood, smoothed my dress, and walked to the window. My reflection stared back at me. The pearls at my throat. The faint crease where the slap had landed. It was almost gone now. Tomorrow there would be lawyers, hearings, maybe a reconciliation, maybe not. But tonight, here in my house, I own every piece of my life. I whispered to no one. It's mine. Behind me, the doorbell camera blinked once, capturing another clip. Me standing in the window, shoulders squared, eyes steady. The night outside framing me like a portrait. That would be the last image. A woman no longer in hiding, watching herself become someone new.